Good morning. Today is another one of our first fives. There are all kinds of passages in the Bible that people reference and talk about, and there are very few places where Jesus talks about commandments. But when we find that he does, we should lean in a little closer. And today we're looking at this passage from Mark chapter 12, beginning with verse 28. And I think this might be helpful for us in these days. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" "The most important one," answered Jesus, "is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these." "Well said, teacher," the man replied. "You're right in saying that God is one, and there is no other but him. To love him with all your heart, and with all your understanding, and with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself is more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices." When Jesus saw that he had answered wisely, he said to him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." And then I love this last line. And from then on, no one dared ask him any more questions. It's kind of just a funny side note, but did you catch the power of what Jesus says? So what are we called to do? Sometimes I get people ask me this question, well, how do I know if I'm following Jesus in the right way? How do I know if what I'm doing is what God is calling me to? And here's what I think for us to remember in this. Are we loving the Lord our God with all our heart, and with all our soul, with all our mind, and with all our strength? In other words, with our whole being, with our whole life, with every part of who I am. And then, the second part of this commandment is loving your neighbor as yourself. Now, in these days, I gotta say that I think if we're not careful, we will try to love God with our whole being, and if we're not careful, we will forget to love our neighbor as ourselves, because what Jesus is saying in this text is the way in which we love God with our whole self is seen in part by how we love our neighbor as ourselves. So here's what I want to say to us today. If what I'm saying is not love to my neighbor, if what I'm doing is not love to my neighbor, then maybe what I'm not recognizing in this moment is it's not really love to God either. If my words are not gracious, if my words are not gentle, if I don't express myself in a way in which I would want someone to speak to me, then I probably should be silent in that way. I mean, sometimes I think we will invest so much time in wanting to love Jesus that we'll forget that we're called to love others. And both are part of the Christian life. I'm laughing. I don't think I said this the other day, but I had someone I was talking to on the phone, and they were really short with me. I mean, like super short. And then they realized I was a pastor, and their whole tone and demeanor changed. Like, oh, well, if I had known that. The problem is sometimes that's what we do as Christians. We're really short with someone. It's someone in the drive-thru, or a clerk, or someone in the doctor's office, or someone in the insurance company, or literally my neighbor. Or we'll begin to do things like this. Well, those people over there, those aren't my neighbors. When in fact, there's all kinds of illustrations throughout the New Testament. I don't really have time for them today, where Jesus basically makes the point, and so do the early church fathers and the apostles, and really everybody who wrote before 300 AD. They make the point to say this: my neighbor is everybody. My neighbor is everyone but myself, because it's tough to be your own neighbor. And so how do I love my neighbor as myself? So if it isn't loving to me, or to someone in my family, or a way I would want to be treated, then I shouldn't treat or love others in that way either. And I love others by knowing that I love God first, and it's the overflow of my life. And so our whole being is wrapped up in this. If we want to follow God, to come back and answer the question, how do I know if I'm living rightly, seeking after God? Well, here's the question. Are you desiring to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself? And if you're doing that, we're following in the right direction. And so maybe a simple prayer for you and I today is this: Father, help me to love as you love. Help me to reflect the life of your son Jesus. And a friend of mine used these words that I think are so valuable. Help me to be more like Jesus today than I was yesterday. Maybe if we'll pray those prayers, Maybe if love will overflow from our life, maybe the world in which we live will begin to look radically different because the people of God begin to reflect the heart of God, which is seen in the person of Jesus. So may you and I today, may we love God with our whole being, and may we love our neighbor as ourselves. We'll see you next time.